If there's one thing that the entire football boot industry seems to agree on, it's an emphasis on speed. Whether the brand is big or small, they probably produce at least one speed boot, and that's because it has become the most popular category of football boots in the modern industry. Now, obviously, there isn't a single football boot that you can buy that will actually make you faster, but I think the popularity of speed boots really shows that the average consumer really values speed. It's also the same reason why we don't have slow boots. Perhaps what's even more interesting is what defines a speed boot, and in my opinion, there are four things that were really first introduced by the grandfather of speed boots, what I consider to be the OG, the Nike Mercurial Vapor 1, and those characteristics are a lightweight construction, a responsive feel, a thin barefoot touch on the ball, and aggressive traction. Those four things make a speed boot. Here's the thing though, you can have a barefoot feel, you can have aggressive traction, you can have a responsive fit, but if the boots aren't light, they're not speed boots. And with that in mind, I have for you today the new king of speed, and it's from Umbro. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the speed boot to have if you're into the lightest possible feel. And believe it or not, that boot comes from Umbro, specifically the Umbro Medusae 3 Pro, a $200 speed boot that in a size 9.5 US weighs in at 6 ounces, making it basically the lightest boot currently on the market. It also has a kangaroo leather upper, a regular central lacing system, and a tongue, and retails for $200. Now I know what you're thinking, Jeff, that sounds way too good to be true. How much is Umbro paying you? And unfortunately, Umbro is not paying me a dime, but the boots on paper objectively are actually very good. With that said, they are far from perfect, and I'll be pointing out what I think is great and what I think is slightly flawed in this review. So if you want to learn more about what I would argue is the most underrated speed boot possibly ever, please stick around, watch the entire video. We'll also go over how they fit and feel on feet. And if you are perhaps interested in a pair of these for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $200 retail price. If you guys do end up enjoying this video and perhaps want to see more reviews of boots from smaller brands, please support this one with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on future content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. Now, if you regularly watch my channel, you may have seen these before. The laceless Umbro Medusae 3 Elite, which retails for $225. The Pro is not a takedown. It's kind of an alternate variation, almost like what Adidas does with the Plus and the 0.1 models, where the Plus is laceless, the 0.1 is basically a variation of the same boot with a lacing system. That is effectively what they've done with the Medusae 3 Pro. That out of these two models, while I think that this is a solid laceless boot, the one to have is definitely the Pro. Just like the Elite, the Medusae 3 Pro features a kangaroo leather upper, and the kangaroo leather spans pretty much the entire upper, which is really nice to see. Basically from this red seam all the way through the midfoot, forefoot, and toe box area, wrapping around to pretty much the same point on the medial side. It is in fact a kangaroo leather material that has some thickness to it, but it definitely overall is on the thinner side, and it also has a little bit of stiffness to it as well. It's not the nicest kangaroo leather you're going to find out there, but at the same time, these only retail for $200, so I think you can only expect so much. Either way, once they're broken in, it gets very soft, it's very flexible, and it does give you that super premium leather-like feel on the ball, as well as overall comfort, despite being only 6 ounces. Typically, when we have boots as light as these, we're used to having them being this paper-thin, borderline plasticky synthetic material, and that is not actually the case. The leather does not feature any kind of stitching, but instead has these kind of debossed lines that are there basically just for the sake of looks. If I had one complaint though in regards to the upper, and this is more so kind of a nitpicky thing and more of a personal preference thing, is that the leather finish itself is very, very slick and smooth. So if you were a fan of some of those older Nike Mercurial models that had that kind of smooth matte finish with no extra grip whatsoever, that's really what this finish reminded me of. Which brings us to this, which in today's modern football boot industry is almost an unfamiliar sight. It's a central lacing system with a regular tongue. We see less and less of this from all the major brands, and one of the huge complaints that I've seen a lot over the years with the evolution of the Nike Mercurial line are the one-piece uppers and the fact that they've gone away from just simplicity. That's what the old Mercurial Vapors were all about, and over the years, while I do think that they have gotten better, they do lack the simplicity that the line once had, and that also is part of the reason why the weights have gone up rather than gone down. This, I think, is a super important element in maintaining the super lightweight construction of this boot, and it just works. It's a central lacing system with good depth to it. It allows you for plenty of adjustability, and despite the entire upper being made out of leather, it has this really nice mesh lining on the inside that seems to be a lot stronger than you might expect it to be, so responsiveness and overall tightness through the midfoot is actually above average for a full leather boot like this. As far as the tongue is concerned, it's really good quality in that it's made out of this kind of microfiber material along the edges, and then the central portion is filled in with a mesh as well as some memory foam kind of to match the thickness of the rest of the leather upper, which brings us to the heel, where you'll definitely have noticed already that this is a low cut boot, which I think makes the most amount of sense when you're talking about building the best, lightest possible speed boot. And I've said this from the beginning, if the objective is to make the boot as light as possible, it makes no sense whatsoever to add extra material in the form of a collar or any kind of extension for the sake of looks, because any material that you add also adds weight to the overall construction. So this features what is a very standard low cut construction, and the heel liner is also really nice despite the boots being so lightweight. There's tons of padding back here. It has a really nice synthetic suede lining all the way along the edges, and you'll also notice that it has these little red kind of textured grip dots, very reminiscent of what you find in the current X line, either with the X18 Plus or X18.1, and it does do its job in terms of gripping your socks ever so slightly. It's not the same silicone dots that you'll find in the laceless model, but for the most part, it gets the job done. The insole is fully removable, and as you'd expect, it is thin and light with a mesh liner on top, and it's made from this very thin, very spongy white foam. Not much to talk about here. Which brings us to the sole plate and stud pattern, perhaps the one aspect of this speed boot where it maybe falls a little bit short in comparison to its competition. The sole plate itself is really well done. It's a thin plastic material that still feels nice and solid but has good flexibility through the forefoot, which I'm personally a big fan of. This has more of a natural sensation versus a Mercurial sole plate that's going to have a slightly stiffer feel, and it does have the added external heel counter at the rear as well. Very sprint frame-esque, but it's a much smaller heel counter, again, I assume, to shave as much weight as possible. The one thing that I don't care for, though, is this added kind of texturing they put in the form of these little dots scattered throughout the entire sole plate that have nothing to do with performance, but you'll find that the dirt kind of gets stuck in between the dots, and it just makes them kind of tricky to clean. As far as the stud pattern is concerned, this is the FG variation, but it might as well be a hard ground stud pattern, which is fine for hard ground, but if you're playing on a nice field that is very well kept and perhaps even on the softer side, the studs themselves are just very, very short, abnormally short for an FG stud pattern. So you can see the layout is pretty straightforward, very Adidas-esque, I would say, in that you have 3 studs on either side of the forefoot, some support studs in the middle, a little bit of a toe pick stud, which I do like, very Mercurial-esque there, and then 4 studs under the heel. It's a combination of kind of conical and bladed studs, definitely feels more like a conical stud pattern, I would say, and the traction, like I said, is decent given that the ground isn't too soft. If it's a little bit harder and you don't need the studs to dig in as much, it's a great stud pattern. Which brings us to what I would argue is the most important performance characteristic of this boot, certainly something that definitely has a huge impact on the feel, and that is the weight. In a size 9.5 US, the Medusa 3 Pro from Umbro weighs in at a remarkably lightweight 6.1 ounces, which is basically the lightest boot you can buy right now. Technically, the laceless variation of this boot is a little bit lighter at around 5.8 ounces in the same size. Trust me when I say you're not really going to be able to feel that 0.3 ounces on your feet. Other than just the way that they fit and feel because of the lacing system, I just think that this is the one to go for if you want the ultimate speed boot experience. And in comparison to something like a Mercurial Vapor 12 Elite, that's almost a full ounce lighter, which is very, very noticeable. And while this is totally a personal opinion thing, and you very likely may disagree, I happen to think that this is a great looking pair of football boots. But again, everyone's got their own opinion on that. So I've swapped out the stock white laces that are this kind of odd off-white color and unusually thick considering that these are a speed boot for some much lighter and Granted, it's not very much lighter, but they are lighter nonetheless. Some red reflective SR4U replacement laces that match the little red kind of pinstripe that you have running through the upper as well as on the studs, and it adds the reflective bits. I just think that it looks a little bit cleaner, plus white laces get dirty very easily. These are a great way of changing up the style of your boots in a very inexpensive way. So if you are interested in some replacement laces for yourself, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. There'll be a little pop-up on screen as well as a link down below in the description. So if you're interested in a pair, be sure to go ahead and check that out. On feet, the Medusa 3 Pros feel really good out of the box. The leather is obviously soft and comfortable, and the boots as a whole have great flexibility, but the leather that they've used here is a very dense style of leather that does legitimately require a couple of wear times to soften up. It's not that kind of open, airy, almost melting type of leather like you see on the Copa 19 Plus from Adidas, just as an example. It's very good, but like I said, it does require a little bit of break-in time. Once you get that couple of wears in though, they are that much more comfortable and really do fit quite well. What they did a good job with this boot is the overall shape, maintaining a very low volume pretty much across the entire foot, giving it a very tight speed boot-esque sensation. Of course, it's leather, so it's never gonna have that super locked-in responsive feel as a synthetic upper that just has more, I guess, rigidity to it. But if you like the comfort of kind of a more traditional leather boot and the super lightweight feel of a speed boot, nothing really does that better than these at the moment, in my opinion. Lockdown in the heel and overall comfort is excellent at the back, and I love the fact that it just has a simple central lacing system with the tongue that just works extremely well. As far as width is concerned, they definitely have some decent width to them. The toe box does have some tightness out of the box, but again, they're leather, so they are going to stretch to the point where I would say that these will fit just about anybody, even if you do have wider feet. And as far as the sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is pretty much perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size for the best possible fit. So in conclusion, is the Umbro Medusa 3 Pro the best speed boot currently on the market? No, it isn't. So circling back to what I talked about in the intro of this video, there are 4 characteristics that, in my opinion, define a speed boot. The most important being weight, which this does better than anything else at the moment, so we don't need to talk about that. Then there is the touch. This is not really a traditional barefoot feel speed boot in that it does utilize a kangaroo leather upper, so there's more of a padded sensation. I wouldn't say that it's bulky, it's still on the thinner side, but it's definitely more traditional in regards to touch on the ball. And I think that the leather, once the boots are broken in, makes for a more comfortable than average feel for this style of football boot, especially one as light as this is. But then there's the other 2 categories. Responsiveness. It's leather, it's soft, it's not super responsive. It's not sloppy by any means, but when compared to a pair of Mercurials, it's nowhere near as responsive. And then of course there's the issue of traction. This stud pattern is fine, and I think if you're playing on hard ground, it's more or less ideal, but in terms of aggressive traction, it's just not there, again, in comparison to other speed boots on offer. So it does 2 out of those 4 things very, very well. Whether or not those are the 2 out of 4 that you deem to be the most important is something you have to decide for yourself. Far from perfect, but I'm a big fan. Anyways, guys, that's it for my review of the Umbro Medusa 3 Pro. If you enjoyed the video, found it helpful and informative, please support it with a like. Again, if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $200 retail price. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.